Welcome to Cathedral Talk, a podcast about architecture and Minecraft, where we converse to save Notre Dame. Oh boy, guys, it's been a while since I saw you. How you two doing?
Yeah, we definitely didn't see each other 3 days ago.
Yeah, that was for something else, though. For Cathedral Talk, we're here to record an episode. People probably noticed there was quite a long break between the previous episode and what came before it. And it's only now that we're recording after that long break. We just didn't get around to publishing that last episode until the break was over. So it's a little bit of a hiccup in time.
We don't have a backlog to fall back on.
No, I went through the one half decent episode in our backlog, and then, so now it's just sort of like, you'll get an episode when we feel like it.
Tom got lazy. We could definitely put it on him.
I definitely wasn't working on any projects I wasn't supposed to be working on instead of the 2-to-1 build this summer.
David's rage is boiling to the surface.
I could leave right now. There doesn't have to be an episode.
There doesn't have to be. You've got Baldur's Gate waiting for you.
I do. A new book.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just read my book this whole time. The two of you have a podcast. I'll just be reading my book.
I didn't go back on any of my words that I promised. I re-listened to some of the episodes recently, and I listened to what I promised, and I'm like, I didn't go back on what I said.
You have been reading too much Aes Sedai, Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time, not lying, but still lying.
Season 2 was good, yo. Have you seen Wheel of Time yet, Zach?
No, I haven't seen the Amazon show, nor have I read the books.
I mean, honestly, I think people who don't read the books are probably the people who are enjoying the show more. I think it's a fine show, but people who are real sticklers for, but this was supposed to happen, and this was supposed to happen. Those are the people who are kind of...
I'm not sure there's a universe of people who are watching it who haven't read the books.
No, there is. Like on my Facebook group, I actually see a lot of people who've said like, I like the show and I've never read the books. So I've seen quite a few.
Tom's Facebook group.
I could social media. I know how to social media. I can do the medias.
Oh boy.
I don't know how to do the Instagrams though. I don't know how to do the Instagrams.
Me either. David, was the book that you got Brandon Sanderson's completion of the Wheel of Time books?
No, but one day I will.
One day.
Be curious if I get to that faster than Tom. Probably not. I think, no, Tom's far enough along. He'll get there faster than me.
Yeah, I'm on book 10 now. So, not only has it been a while, but this is also a special episode. We are on episode 30, gentlemen.
It's divisible by 3.
It is divisible by 3.
Those are the special episodes.
And this will be the last time that we ever mention the number again.
That's not true.
Because if you ever want someone to start this fresh, there's no way in hell they're going back and listening to 30. But if they can you just pick up the newest one. They're not going to pick up the newest one if it says 31 in front of it.
Do you really think that there are no other people like me out there?
Yes, I really think there are no other people like you out there.
You're very wonderfully special, Tom. We love you dearly.
You think I'm the only person who's willing to go back and listen to old episodes on podcasts?
Yes, or at the very least, there's no reason to make it more intimidating for new people than it needs to be by putting a number in the front. Just take out the number.
Well, I don't know. Like, what if it's like episode 100, right? Don't you at least say, it's
You can do that. That's fine. You can do we can put a 100 in front of episode 100. That's fine.
What about 60? I really like 60. It's my favorite anti-prime.
No. Unless the name of the episode is my favorite number is 60, then you can put 60 in it.
What about 9 episodes after episode 60?
Is that Zach's favorite number?
No, I randomly, it was just a random
assignment.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, we will have an episode that is my favorite number is 60 for Tom. We will have another episode for Zach that says my favorite number is 60. There we go.
So I have been alluding to for a while now that I wanted to go in depth a little bit more into what the heck this thing called change ringing is, which is actually an activity of mine. And we've talked about it on our past Bell episodes before. As you recall, on episode 10, we talked about the world's best Borden bells, the very large bells. And then in episode 20, we talked more about all the bells at Notre Dame. But today we're going to talk about what change ringing is.
Is it when you have a bunch of quarters in your pocket and you walk around?
That's pretty good. Hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah, wow. Oh, I just got it. Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm good now. Wow, I had to think that. Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, Tom. This podcast isn't for thinking.
Tom tries to do as little thinking as possible in this. He just wants to try to get all the information out of his brain into the microphone for recording. And Zach's and my job is to derail that process as much as possible.
I was intimately on the other side of this when we did the Create World tour, and you guys were like, hey, now I get to disrupt Zach.
Well, you see, my brain really stalled out because I thought Zach was also making a double entendre with quarters and like quarter peels, which we're going to talk about later. But then I was like, Zach doesn't know about that, does he? I was like,
yes.
Jesus, he's way ahead of me. Okay, no, he does.
Yeah, quarter peels in your pocket.
Better than banana peels in your pocket.
Well, we're going to talk about change ringing, an English style of ringing bells that I am very fond of. But I think one of the best things to do when you're first learning what the heck change ringing is to have some juxtaposition with something that's not change ringing. Probably with a little bit of prejudice.
Little bit.
The British do refer to other kinds of ringing, especially in Europe, as continental ringing, because there isn't the same sort of form or structure into the way they ring their bells over there. It's usually mechanical. It's usually struck with semi-random blows. What I have here is a little clip from the Cathedral of Brussels, and this is just a little bit of continental ringing. In my opinion, actually, I think it's a perfectly nice sounding sound. It's still quite distinct from what change ringing actually is. Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind having a quick listen to the Cathedral of Brussels.
So random.
So random. Can you tell how many bells?
I see 3. There are probably more. So how random is this?
Not random enough for a random number generator, but random enough for your ear to not be able to decipher a pattern. How's that?
My ears are pretty good at deciphering patterns.
I know, and it's not pretty random by that stretch.
Yeah.
So, Zach, you remember when you took physics, right?
Oh,
no.
That was 1 or 2 classes of that, yeah.
1 or 2 only? That was it, right? No more than that?
No, it's not my major or anything. I don't do anything with.
Do you remember like out of phase oscillations with trig functions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, you have to imagine that you've got different bells swinging at different rates, right? Some bells swing faster and some bells swing slower. And they're all just sort of left off to ring on their own rate. And so sometimes the bells will clang on top of each other, and sometimes the bells will be sort of, roughly equivalently spaced, but it all kind of comes and goes. And so it sort of keeps transitioning from an in-phase sound to an out-of-phase sound. And you kind of get that drone sound with continental ringing.
The thing that makes me think of the most is when you're sitting at an intersection at a red light and you're turning a certain direction, and so is the person in front of you, and your turn signals do not line up.
Oh, yeah.
Very frustrating. But then you can watch them come into phase and then leave phase and come into phase and leave phase.
Yeah. Although I don't think your dashboard blinking turn signals line up at all with the actual lights on your car outside, do they?
I think that's also possibly true, yeah. But that's just another thing that comes in and out of phase, maybe.
Yeah. Although you'd never know.
Definitely no way to test that.
No, definitely none.
Okay, so continental ringing is super random, but change ringing sounds way more ordered. I presume you have an example of that for us to listen to.
Yeah. In juxtaposition, what we have here is change ringing. One of my favorite towers to listen to I have here is Westminster Abbey, which not only has very lovely sounding bells, 10 of them, but also they're rung by some of the best bands in change ringing out there. They're rung, of course, for all the major monarchy events. and religious holidays. So when you hear Westminster Abbey, you're going to hear very fine change ringing. And this is one of the better recordings I found.
So Zach, Tom and I are too biased to describe. What about that does or does not feel different to you compared to the continental ringing?
Well, it doesn't sound random or pseudo-random. It sounds ordered.
A word that we often use with derision in change ringing is syncopation. You don't want to have syncopation like da-dun, dun, da-dun, dun, 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 dun. You want to have very even da 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 da. You want to have even spaces between your bells so that it's a very clean sound.
Well, this does not sound metronomic as much as they might want them to be that way.
No.
There's the platonic ideal, and then there's the reality of what it actually is to do.
Absolutely.
And we basically, Tom mentioned these are the best ringers in the world. Even they do not reach the platonic ideal.
Well, I don't know if I'm not a change ringer, so I don't know what their idea about what good music sounds like. I mean, this sounds good, but Jimi Hendrix was amazing on the guitar, and he was not what you would consider to be metronomic either. So I reject the notion, even if they hold this notion, I personally reject the notion that to be perfect means to be metronomic.
It is an interesting question that in general, I do think that change ringing as a form of music requires more leniency just because of the raw difficulty of doing it in the way that is quote, quote, truly intended, as compared to like if you went to an orchestra concert and there was that amount of error, you'd be like, oh my God, I can never listen to this again.
Well, it depends on the kind of concert that you're going to, because I would say like more jazzy influenced composers, right? If you're listening to like Debussy or something like that, you can listen to a very regular performance of that, or you can listen to a very, not swingy, but less precise performance of that. And I think if that's your intent, then you can pull it off exceptionally well, and it is very affecting.
I think the key word there is intent, though. Chain ringers are not intending to ring badly. We just do.
Yeah, it's very difficult for reasons which we'll get into.
So you mentioned that it's this descending order, da 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 da. But as you keep listening to the recording, you will start to hear that in different orders.
Well, we haven't gone through the complete definition of change ringing yet.
I don't think there's any way to explain change ringing that doesn't take 45 minutes. I've tried. It's very hard to explain it in like 4 sentences.
It is. It's very difficult to explain it in just a paragraph, but I'll do my best.
Well, we have 45 minutes.
Tom, there's a word for that different order, right?
Permutations. Zach, what's a permutation?
A permutation is any way that a set can be ordered. So if you have a deck of cards, 52 playing cards.
Excellent.
When you pull it out of the pack, it is in one permutation. If you shuffle it, it is in another permutation. If you shuffle it again, it's probably in a completely separate permutation than the other two. So it is just a way to take a set of things and order it in a particular way. Any particular way is a permutation of that set.
And you can even take subsets of the larger set too, right? You can take like, how many ways can I pick 3 out of 52 cards, for example?
Yeah.
That'd be a permutation too.
This is not a computer science podcast, but there are a lot of different sorting algorithms that gain their speed by sorting subsets.
Yeah.
and then sort the main set after the subsets are sorted.
That's cool. So permutations in terms of our bells is ring all sorts of different permutations. That's the big idea of change ringing. The bells are usually tuned to a major scale, and usually with some additional bells for a second scale above the first scale. Towers often have at least 6, 8, or even 10 bells, or sometimes 12. But then we start to ring those orders, descending from the lightest bells to the heaviest bells, and we start to ring them in these different sequences or these different permutations. One of the key ways we ring these different permutations is that we can only switch from one permutation to another with something called adjacent transpositions. That is, you can only switch from one permutation to the next permutation or the next sequence to the next sequence by switching your neighbors only. So for example, if you were only on 4 bells, 1, 2, 3, 4 assigned numbers, one next permutation that you could do would be 2, 1, 4, 3, because that's just your neighbors switching side by side. You can't suddenly jump from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 4, 3, 2, 1. That would be way too big a jump for the first and last bells. You guys are stunned at the mathematics. I can see it.
No, I was just thinking that, like, if you're doing ring mathematics, then 4 and 1 are adjacent to each other, and 2 and 3 are adjacent to each other. So if you're doing a ring math, then that is actually adjacent swaps, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's not physically how that works, though, because what you have to think about physically is that if you were to swap the 4 and the 1, you would be ringing 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. That 4 bell would have to ring and then immediately ring again. And physically that can't happen because it's still in its upwards trajectory before it has a chance to come back around and sound on the other direction.
A physical limitation of the actual bell itself, not a limitation of the math.
Right. So that's why we only deal with adjacent transpositions. The bells cannot ring fast enough to suddenly quickly swap them. It's this very gradual shift to shift to shift to shift from one adjacent transposition to the next.
But if you're having a set of 10 bells, is the heaviest bell to lightest bell swap a legal swap at some point during the piece?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the heaviest bells and the lightest bell will often end up side by side, and you will be switching. You have to slowly, line by line, sequence by sequence, you have to eventually get them so they are neighbors. And once they're neighbors, then yeah, they can start switching.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
What gets most confusing about chain ringing music when you're comparing the permutations is I might be the lightest bell, and so I start off in the first position, but I should not think of myself as one, that I'm in the first position always. Like, I might be the lightest bell in the second position. I might be the lightest bell in the third position. I might be the lightest bell in the fourth position. And it's the position that you're in that you're swapping neighbors with.
Yeah.
It's not that as the lightest bell, I can only swap with the next lightest bell. No, I can swap with any of the bells so long as they're my neighbor in position. So if I'm in the fourth position, I can swap with whoever's on the third or the fifth.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yep.
It's an annoyance because we do refer to the lightest bell as the one or the second lightest as the two. But what actually matters for purposes of the shifting is not what number bell you are. It's what number in the sequence you are.
It's almost too bad that we don't refer to the bells by their pitch name. Like, you're the D.
Yeah.
You're the B flat. You're the F sharp. You know, it's like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We just have to keep track of more numbers, more numbers, more numbers.
Or even just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Or Roman numeral I.
That would not get confusing at all.
The most verbally understandable numerical system of all time.
Anyway, to understand change ringing, you have to understand what the goal is, right? And the goal is to ring all these different sequences, these permutations. Now, there's many ways to do that, and there's many different ways you could choose, oh, let's swap this way or let's swap this way. It's not like you ever have only one option. There's many different ways that you can compose what are called methods to create all those different permutations. And we actually have lots of different methods that we use that we have to memorize that tell us, okay, you're supposed to swap this way, you're supposed to swap this way. It looks like a big mess of zigzag lines and numbers when you look at it. I have a tiny little book with me that I carry in my backpack when I want to memorize a particular method that we're supposed to ring. And it's kind of funny when I pull it out like on the bus or something, because I've had people like look over my shoulder and just like raise their eyebrow at me like, what the heck are you reading? Like,
it looks like you're reading The Matrix.
It kind of does, yeah.
Like the numbers falling in The Matrix. It looks like you're just staring at that and absorbing it into your brain somehow.
So the National Cathedral has 6 bells?
The National Cathedral has 10 bells.
10 bells.
At least 10 change ringing bells.
10 change ringing bells.
It's just easier to ring on 6. You probably saw 6 more frequently.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. We many times when we don't have a full strong band to complete the circle of all 10 bells, we will just, have smaller methods using 6 bells or so on.
You basically can't do fewer than 6 because it's too fast.
Yeah.
You technically can, but not really.
Yeah.
Tom, do you teach like functions as one of your math classes?
Yeah.
Like f of g of x and stuff like that?
Composition of functions or just functions in general?
Both.
Yeah. I mean, well, certainly in calculus, but I have taught pre-calc many times too.
So this method that you're describing takes like a cardinality 6 set and transforms it into another cardinality 6 set.
Zach, I know I was also a math major.
Yeah, this is just payback.
You're trying to rub in how I was rubbing the physics major into you earlier, but I've forgotten what cardinality actually means.
It's just how big the set is.
Oh, okay, thank you. Now I feel even dumber.
Sorry. It's like when you talk about, like, when kids talk about infinity, like, infinity is a cardinality, infinity isn't a number. And so that's the distinction.
Okay.
Infinity is the cardinality of, like, the integers or the reals. That doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
So you got a set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you pass that into your method, and then you get 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5 out of it.
Right. That would be one possible change that could come after that. Yes.
Yeah. And so when you're learning this method, do you think about it in like, I'm going to learn this function, or like, how do you go about learning what this method is?
Right. So I have to keep this at sort of a medium level because, again, even I am still learning many things that I don't know about all the nuance and details that really go into composing a true method that can be rung.
Have we said yet that we never repeat a line?
No, I was trying to get to that, and we kind of keep, doing our usual cathedral talk thing. But that's the second major rule of these methods, right? We said that you can only ring one permutation to the next with adjacent transpositions, switching with your neighbors. But the other idea is that you can never repeat a permutation.
2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5. You will not ring that exact sequence of numbers again.
You will never ring 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5 again. Right.
For the
piece.
Composition, the piece of music that you're doing.
For the composition, right. Now we have smaller compositions called touches. They can last, like 5, 10, 15 minutes. You can have longer compositions that are called quarter peals that last about 45 to 55 minutes. And then sort of the holy grail of change ringing is ringing what's called a peal. And this is, again, where this word peal gets used like a lot in change ringing. Peals can refer to the tower bells themselves. Peal can also refer to just the bells are ringing, making sound. The bells are pealing. In this context, the word peal is literally referring to a huge set of permutations that you're ringing that usually takes about 3 hours to ring.
That's not an arbitrary number. That's based on the fact that the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yep.
If you arrange those in every possible order,
yes,
results in 5,040 different lines.
Correct.
Of those orders of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, et cetera, et cetera. 5,040 of those.
Yep.
And if you ring all of those, should take about 3.5 hours.
Yep. I mean,
exceptions and caveats and all that, but
right.
That's where it's based on.
I was going to say lighter bells, you can ring a peal faster. You can ring a peal in under 3 hours. At the National Cathedral, it's going to take you about 3 hours and 15 or 20 minutes.
And so let's be very explicit here too about when Tom says ringing for 3.5 hours. That is straight. That is without break. That is without sitting down.
Yep.
Because we haven't talked about the physical act of ringing the bells yet. You are standing, pulling a rope.
Yep.
That is 6, 8, 10 people
Yep.
standing in a tower under their bells, holding ropes, pulling them for 5,040 times for 3.5 hours straight.
Get your reps in.
This is something that only crazy people do. Tom does it. I have not. I am a bell ringer too. I haven't done it since before the pandemic. The most I have done.
We'll get you back.
The most I have done is a quarter peal, which was 45 minutes. And that is so intense to concentrate for 45 minutes. I don't even understand how you all do it for 3.5 hours.
It takes a lot of practice. And I still screw up a lot. But
and you can just if it's going to be a 3.5 hour one, at minute 3 hours and 25 minutes, you can screw up, not get to the end, and somehow mess up, and you repeat 2 lines. So like you do 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 twice, and then everyone's like, well, that one didn't count.
Right. That one didn't count.
We didn't ring a peal.
It's like, well, I guess hang up our ropes. We're done.
No credit for this because we screwed up and we rang the same thing twice. These people, and then this time I'm going to say these people and not myself, are so intense.
Ringers are the most interesting subset of culture I've ever met. They're equal parts nerd, athlete, and sweet, loving fascists.
But one thing that you didn't use to describe them, which is how you described them in the past, I think on this podcast, is that the bells used to be rung by people unaffiliated with the church, and they used to be a bunch of drunkards.
Yeah, fascists.
Now they're going to listen, and you're going to get a big talking to when you go back.
I'm looking forward to how much Tom chooses to keep in the edit.
Yeah, I love my chain ringers dearly. Obviously, I wouldn't have stuck with it for this long.
Unless you yourself were a fascist.
The point that I've tried to make is that they could be really sweet and loving, outside of, really in any time whatsoever. But the moment you're standing in that circle and you're all ringing together, it's like, we have a leader. We have to follow what they do. If we screw up, we're going to get yelled at. You're going to get yelled at really hard. You'll probably have a heart attack. And you just got to get over yourself.
It requires a lot of discipline. So if anything short of that, it's not going to happen.
I forget if I said this before on the podcast, but I encountered change ringing for the first time at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. When I was first getting used to the city, I was spending 2007 for my spring semester abroad over there on the British Isles. I had never experienced ringing tower bells in any significant form up until that point. And I didn't really know what the difference between different kinds of ringing there were out there. But when I heard St. Paul's for the first time, I was amazed because it had such a unique sound to it, one that I never quite expected. And as I slowly learned more about change ringing, I slowly became aware of just all the different nuance that goes into producing the music. And I was really taken aback by the fact that change ringing is rung by people. It is rung by people who work in a band, who are pulling ropes in a tower attached to each individual bell, as opposed to what mostly happens in continental Europe, where it is usually largely mechanical. Not always, but often.
You were already aware that Quasimodo was mostly in the past?
I think I mentioned once that when I went to Notre Dame, I was expecting the first time back in 2007 to be blown away. But remember, this is before they had installed their new bells at Notre Dame. They still had their wonderful board and Emmanuel, but all the other bells were terrible. They were those post-revolution bells that were poorly made of poor metal alloys, and they have a very clangy sound. I talked to just the tour guide at the top of the tower, and I said, yeah, so how do you make your bells ring here after I had already experienced change ringing in Britain? And he said, we just press this button.
Do they do change ringing in cathedrals that are normally set up for non-change ringing ever?
The bells have to be really configured in a precise way, which we'll get to in just a moment here. It's all about the mechanics of the wheels that the bells are mounted on. And while, for example, in that Brussels cathedral we just looked at, the bells were on a wheel, but the wheels weren't really quite the large size of a change ringing wheel. The idea with change ringing is that you attach all your bells to very large wheels that can spin a full 360 degrees. And the wheels are large enough that even little bells can ring close to the same speed, swinging speed, as the big bells. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to have these wheels make it so that you can control the bells so that they can all ring at about the same speed.
I hadn't realized that it was the size of the wheel that made them all roughly equivalent.
It's the radius, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's not 1-to-1, but it is very much about positioning the bells on the headstocks with the wheels so that, you don't just have a little bell that's going cling, 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 cling. A little bell can be rung cling, cling.
So it's the wheels are roughly the same size for all the bells.
Not quite. Like if you look, for example, at Washington National Cathedral, our treble wheel is still notably smaller than the tenor wheel, but kind of like Zach alluded to there, the orientation of the treble is probably a little bit different positioned than the orientation of the tenor on its wheel, because they all have to sort of ring roughly equivalent speed.
Anyways, we're getting way ahead.
Yeah, I should go a little bit more in here. So really, the main idea with change ringing is that the bell doesn't just swing back and forth. The bell swings a full 360 degrees. And you're probably not used to thinking about bells going upside down, right? Upside down to one side and upside down to the other. This was an innovation that was made in about the 17th century in England. Ringers at the time were trying to find ways that they can make, again, like I said, smaller bells ring at different rates using different sized wheels. Once they figured out how to do that, this is sort of what enabled them to invent change ringing. Ringing tunes on these bells really doesn't work because these bells cannot ring two notes sequentially fast enough. You have to have a pause between each time a bell sounds its note. But instead, what they invented was a system of mathematical permutations.
Did carillons exist by this point?
Well, I'm not a carolliner, and I don't know for sure, but I think they did.
Because I almost wonder if this is like the progression of random continental ringing, try to impose some order to that, can't quite get to tunes, but can get to some semblance of order with chain ringing. And then, I don't know, maybe carillons invented, and so then you can make actual tunes. But I guess that implies that carillons are the more modern, advanced form of bell ringing, and Tom won't stand for that. So
one thing that's fun to note is that we have some vocabulary. I love vocabulary, as you well know.
Oh, so fun.
So much vocabulary. For example, how many different bells we may be ringing on. Like David said, really the normal smallest number of bells you'll ever ring, any method to will be 5 and up. But we do have names for as little as 3 and up. Obviously, you wouldn't have a name for just one bell because that's stupid. That's not anything other than just ringing a bell. And ringing 2 bells is just, I don't know, pairs or something. But we have names for 3 and up, any kind of method to 3 or more bells. If you're ringing 3 bells, which again, there's only 6 ways you can come up with 6 different permutations for 3 bells, but we call that ringing singles. If you have 4 bells and you're ringing a method 2, that's called minimus. If you're ringing 5 bells, this is where things start to become more normal. 5 bells is called doubles. 6 bells is called minor. 7 bells is called triples. 8 bells is called major. 9 bells is called caters. 10 is called royal. 11 is called sinks. And 12 is called maximus. There are a couple towers out there that have more than 12, but they're kind of ridiculous and not conventional. So 12 is sort of considered the absolute apex of bell ringing in most regards.
And for weird reasons that have never been fully explained to me, bell ringers don't like ringing on odd numbers. So Tom said that ringing 5, but when you ring 5, you actually ring 6.
Yeah.
5 of them do their goofy permutation thing, and then the 6th one just rings behind. It's called tenoring behind, just always at the end, always last, 100% of the time.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it's not so much that ringers don't like it, it's just that it sounds terrible to have an odd number.
Does it?
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Huh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I guess that is
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That just doesn't work. You need to have an even number so that you don't make all the sidewalk walkers just fall over into the street.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Okay.
Yeah, we might get, accused of murder or something.
That seems extreme.
Well, we're extreme people.
We have established that.
Speaking about peals, we talked earlier, David, you mentioned that a peal was 5,040 changes, which comes from 7 bells and all the ways you can have different permutations for 7 bells. For some, what in my opinion is a rather silly reason, the Central Council of Ringers at some point in the past, I don't remember when, decided that 5,040, why don't we just amend that to 5,000? And so nowadays, any composition of change ringing that is at least 5,000 permutations or 5,000 changes long is considered to be a full peel, which kind of breaks my heart because there's no mathematical reason for that other than, hey, 5,000 is a big round number, isn't it?
Yeah, just like there's no reason to celebrate that this is the 30th episode.
Right. Of course, you might be wondering, why did they choose 7 bells? Why didn't they go with 6 or 8? 8 is a major scale. Why didn't we define what a peal was based on a major scale?
Because that would take 12 hours?
No, 24.
24 hours?
Do you think anybody's ever done it before?
Of course.
Of course they have, because these people are insane.
Well, a few people are that insane.
Yeah.
I will never do that.
Yeah, but it's a bell curve, right? And the middle part of the bell curve is already... Yeah, okay, shut up. The middle part of the bell curve is already insane people. The extreme end, they're the 24-hour people.
Yeah.
Do you wear like a stadium buddy while you're doing that, or what?
What?
I don't even know what that is. What?
You're definitely not talking to people who go to many things in stadiums.
What's the stadium buddy?
All right. Well, if nature calls, do you swap out with another ringer?
Oh no, you piss yourself.
No, yeah, you okay, so the first way that quite a few people are ever exposed to the concept of change ringing is reading this famous novel or watching this old TV miniseries called Lord Peter Wimsey and the Nine Tailors.
Yes, most people.
No, I said most people who are ever exposed to change ringing.
He's not wrong.
Again, not that many people know what change ringing is. More people have read that book. So, it's relative.
It's true. It's true.
I don't know. Fine, whatever.
In that book, or in that miniseries, there is a scene where Lord Peter Wimsey is ringing in a change ringing band, and he swaps with somebody who takes his place while he goes out for a quick break and a stroll to listen to the bells outside. Now, by any modern standards, this is a big no-no. If you're going to ring a peal, you're going to ring that peal yourself on your assigned bell the whole time. There is no swapping with other people. However, I was reading a bit more in depth into the Wikipedia article, and I think I remember reading somewhere that in the past, and I think that maybe this wasn't actually entirely frowned on as much would be today. So since that did happen like just after World War I, then that Nine Tailors novel, that might have actually been more acceptable, and maybe that's why she got away with it back in the time. But by any modern standards, no, you cannot swap with anybody. You ring the whole peal. If you're ringing 8 bells, then the 8 of you will stand in a circle together.
In the story, isn't that one where they're doing it all night or something?
Yeah, so they are ringing.
It's definitely more than 3.5 hours.
They are ringing. I think they ring in that for like 9 hours or something.
Regardless of that, like, I think even the people at that end of the spectrum of insanity, like, there are human body physical limits that I imagine necessitate a swapping out if you're ringing for something that long.
Well, this is why I brought up the stadium buddy.
I don't know what stadium buddy is. It's just somebody that you go to a stadium with?
It allows you to relieve yourself without wetting yourself.
Oh, this is an object?
Yes.
Oh.
Wait, this is not a person?
Yeah, I thought it was a person.
This is not a person.
Is this just a diaper?
No.
Is this an app on your phone?
What?
What? What is a stadium buddy, Zach?
I don't think I want to Google this.
I'm kind of afraid.
Yeah, you can Google it. The images that come up are very amusing, or at least the first one.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Maybe not on like a work computer. You don't want to be Googling this. For any of Tom's students, you probably don't want to be Googling this while you're at...
No.
What the?
It is Googleable with Safe Search on. So
you can buy them on Amazon.
Yeah, you can.
Wait, is it like a...
we can stop this line of this. No ringers use this. Dear God, I don't want to know if they do.
I would rather they use those than using a diaper, personally.
Well, people don't. Okay. Just go before and hold it. And don't drink any water.
Yeah, just don't drink water.
You don't have time to drink water.
That sounds like a great way to pass out.
It absolutely is. Also, you don't have hands free to drink water, so that's mostly taken care of.
Well, I mean, we brought up the stadium buddy. The obvious accessory that goes along with this is the hat with the 2 beer koozies in them with a straw that go around.
And you might as well just rig the 2 systems together so it's just a constant flow of liquid.
This is like the still suit in Dune. Is that what you're thinking of?
I have not seen or read Dune.
Tom
has not seen or read Dune. I will say that for him.
I have not. Sorry.
It's on my list. I'll get there. I have Brandon Sanderson to read first.
Okay.
I mean, just to show a little bit of the eccentricities of change ringers.
That's a good word.
I don't know anybody like in my own ringing circles who has rung like a full crazy peal of 40,320 changes for what's called an extent on 8 bells. That's another word we use. If you're trying to ring all possible permutations on a certain number, that's called ringing an extent. And like David said, the extent on 7 bells was 5,040. The extent on 8 bells is 40,320, which is just 8 factorial. I do know some ringers in my circles who did ring. I think it was something on the order of, if it wasn't this number, it was awfully close. I think it really was this exact 11,111 changes, which was rung on 20, 11, 11, 11, I believe. I think I have that right. I have to double check that. But they, ringers will do funny things like that just for, for fun. Fun. It's fun.
Fun.
So you're talking about how many permutations are in a peel or an extent.
Yeah.
The peel is a subset of the extent, I'm assuming.
Right. Or it could be a combination. If you're trying to ring a peel of, let's say, 6 bells, which is called minor, the extent of 6 bells is only 720. So you can't get a peel, which is supposed to be 5,000 changes now, without ringing several extents of minor.
7 extents, in fact.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, if you're aiming for
5,040.
Although sadly, few people do these days. Most people just go for 5,000.
So they do 6.85 extents and stop?
Yeah.
That's confusing. How would you...
Well, it can still... There's all sorts of ways in these crazy compositions to make it come round, as it says, where you get the bells jury-rigged back into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pattern.
That feels more memorization than is necessary. Just keep doing the same thing 7 times. That's so much simpler and doesn't take...
I don't know. Actually, this is a good question. I don't know if this is a rule. I still haven't learned to be much of a conductor myself yet. That's sort of next on my to-do list of my ringing career. But I don't actually remember if there is a rule or not, whether if you are allowed to ring the same compositions over and over again for like 5 bells or 6 bells.
You probably have to switch it up each of those 7 times.
Or if it has to be a different method each time.
Yeah, you're probably right. Probably does.
Honestly, but it honestly might not be a rule. It might just be convention.
Yeah.
It might not be like, it's not like a written down rule, but it might just be a sort of unspoken rule that it is poor form to do that,
Right.
So you're talking about how big like the domain is for the extent. How large is the method space? Like how many compositions are possible for 6 bells?
Would you like to see my app? Here you go, Zach. I am clicking select a method. This is all the methods for 6 bells. I am scrolling.
All the ones that are named, at least.
All the ones that were programmed in that phone. They're always inventing new methods. That's the thing. They're always inventing new ways to do things. And a lot of methods have very similar characteristics, like, oh, this just does this just does this. We'll definitely have to do a change ringing part 2 episode in some time in the future where we'll go more into the mathematics of how our methods put together, when frankly I understand it better because I don't understand it entirely perfectly myself.
The methods that we do there's some pretty common ones that people learn first that have names like Plain Bob.
Okay.
Which is funny of a name, but we're very used to it. Or Stedman or Oxford. But this ridiculous list that has lots of things that no one will ever learn just to scroll through also has things like Puff the Magic Dragon Bob.
Yep.
Number of the Beast Bob.
That's a good one. I haven't heard of that one.
Oxford Circus Slow Course. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Bob.
So.
Right. I'm not going to go too much into the weeds on how all the mathematics work in tandem to generate all these perfect permutations so that you never repeat anything. Again, the math that goes into that is pretty extreme. And I know that like a lot of ringers happen to also have some computer science in them and have used like computers to prove basically that, oh yes, this particular composition for this peel is really truly a peel, nothing repeated. Like it's not always that for every situation that you can quickly tell whether or not it was a perfect peel or not. A lot of peels have been sort of written and composed and have been checked over for decades and centuries. And we only know by the convention that, yes, this has been proven to be truly a unique pattern.
The dark side of that, though, is we mentioned before, if you mess up somewhere and it crashes and burns, then it doesn't count. It also does happen sometimes where a band will have rung an entire peel. It went great. You finished. Everyone felt super happy with themselves. They left. And then some mean person, one of these people who understands composition way more than Tom or I,
some fascist,
will go back and look at the composition that was wrong and realize, oh, wait, nope, 2 of these permutations repeated. Doesn't count, and it is literally struck from the records.
Yeah.
And these people live by their records. So having it struck, but they'll do that. They're like, oh, nope, we broke the rules. This doesn't count. No one gets credit for it.
I mean, you should check out our Bellboard website. We have every peel that's been rung in God knows how many years up there. You can look at all our records. David's right. We take our records quite seriously.
You can literally search people's names here, just like I'm going to search myself. I think I only have 2.
It's bb.ringingworld.co.uk.
I've got 3. I have 3 quarters within
good for you.
3-year period, and then COVID hit.
I thought you only had like 2. I'm glad you have at least 3. That's a nice round number.
Well, it took us like
3 is a round number.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Fine. It's a triangular number. Are you happy now?
I rang my first quarter peel, which is the shortest composition that anyone logs. Randomly on a day, they're like, hey, let's just do this. I'm like, what? Okay. And I just got thrown in the deep end. But Tom wasn't there. And Tom was very mad because he wanted my first to be with him. And then over the next 2 years, we proceeded like 5 times to ring together, and it always failed. And so it took, I think, 2 full years of attempts for me to get my second quarter peel.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to do it with Tom.
Yeah. I remember now. Wow, that was a long time ago. That took a while. Yeah, funny too on Bellboard. Like we have like people can vote for the favorite peel that was rung like for this week. And so, like, if you go on there, if you have an account, you could be like, oh, people should vote for our peel. Our peel was the coolest peel. Like, you're comparing with, like, people who rung in Britain versus people who rung in North America or other places in the Commonwealth. And if it was, like, a particularly notable peel, like, oh, you were rung a really, advanced method, or you were ringing for this important reason, like this famous person died or something like that, you might put votes for that. But, like, recently, like, one of our peels actually made it to the front page of Bellboard. I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. And it's like, how did we win? It's like, we won with 50 votes. Yay.
It's a lot of people in this world.
Well, yeah, we won with 50 votes. Yeah. Yeah. For a comparison, how many towers are actually rigged with change ringing bells in the world?
In the US, I think there are like 60-ish towers, right? So it feels like, there's quite a few. There happens to be 4 in our area, more or less. But then how many of these are in England, Tom?
5,000.
So that's a couple of orders of magnitude more.
Yeah. And you can imagine that's how many more ringers they got over there, too.
You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a bell tower.
Yeah. Although it's still funny, like, if you talk to a random...
That's a phrase, Zach. Don't give me that look. That's a phrase.
No, I'm just trying to remember what the name of that, like, the hammer on the inside of the bell.
Hammer.
The clapper?
Clapper. Yeah, that's the word.
That strikes.
It wasn't hammer.
Yeah, right. You don't want it to actually be a dead cat.
The last quarter peel I did was on Christmas Day. I have no memory of that.
Wow.
We rang a quarter peel on Christmas Day.
Both of us or just you?
Yeah, you and me, 2018.
Oh, good for us.
I do not remember that.
Oh, wow.
What have we not said?
No, I've got more things to say. We're definitely going to do a part 2 chain ringing because I'm a chain ringer. It's just like David said, it's impossible to talk about chain ringing without
talking methods that you think are stupid. So, they did that one.
One misconception about ringing methods and how we sort of memorize these methods. By the way, we don't look at sheet music when we're doing this. This is all happening in our heads. You memorize like a sort of the zigzag line that tells you which direction, which neighbors you're swapping around with. for different methods, but the line you memorize is probably only 50, 100 maybe-ish lines long. And like I said, when you're trying to ring a peal, what you're actually doing is you're following the line, but then there is a conductor in the band who's in charge of the ringing of the day. And the conductor will make a couple different commands, a couple different calls. Usually one call, the most common, is called a bob. Yes, another bob gets thrown in here, the word bob.
For no apparent reason. We just call random things bobs.
Although usually when
Hey, Bob.
when it's a British person, usually what you hear more of is more of a up kind of sound. It sounds like up rather than bob when they say it a lot of times, just because, I don't know. I've decided whenever I practice conducting, I always just go up instead of bob, just because I don't know, it seems to be the thing to do. And then the second command they can make is called a single.
For also inexplicable reasons.
Well, actually, that one makes a little bit more sense to me, but I won't get into that now. What these commands do is they effectively short circuit your position in this pattern that you've been following, and it suddenly quickly reintroduces you to a different point in the pattern that you've been ringing. So it's kind of like if you've ever been a musician and you're like following sheet music and suddenly you hit a point where it's like, repeat these measures again. You have to jump back to this point in the music. It's kind of like that, but it can happen at any point.
Yeah. It's basically you're following along this nice, pretty line that's in your head. Then suddenly someone shouts and then you have to screw it up intentionally.
Right. It's like, I was like, I've got this. And then they tell you, do this. And then you're like, oh, crap. And then you suddenly have to completely jump to another spot and it's freaky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's usually where things fall apart.
It's a single. Does that represent the start of a peal that would make sense on a single or a 3-bell?
Well, actually, I think it's kind of related.
Have you started to notice that we use the same word repeatedly for entirely different things that have no relationship to one another?
Peals, bobs, singles.
But they might have a relationship.
I mean, in this case, you could kind of say there is sort of a relationship. It is referring to how many bells are unaffected by the call versus how many bells are actually affected. Because usually when a call is made, not everybody has to suddenly jump around and do something completely different. Usually there's quite a few bells that actually can just ignore the call and carry on. And usually you're a happy person when you're unaffected. But if you are affected for a bob, usually I think it's 3 bells usually are affected, or when it's a single, it's usually just 2 bells that are affected.
It'd be weird if it wasn't 3, right? Because single is a peal for 3 bells.
We're being inconsistent? Whoa. That's crazy.
I remember a few years ago when I was first trying to get this podcast off the ground, I was like, I'm going to build my audience by reaching out to my ringing, community at large, and I'll post the episodes on like Facebook and stuff, and I'll get like hundreds of listeners. And long story short, that didn't happen. Most people did not listen to this podcast. But now I'm kind of thankful, because if they listen to this episode today, they're going to just point out everything that I got the nuance just slightly wrong. Like I said, bell ringers, lovely people, lovely to have a beer with. Drinking is mandatory, by the way.
I don't drink.
Except if you're David.
Yeah.
A couple misconceptions that people have about some of the mechanics. One, we talked about how the bell is swinging a full 360 degrees, right? There's a rope that is wound around the wheel that gets pulled up in one direction and then pulled up in the other direction as the bell swings back and forth. When you first enter a tower and you look at all the ropes that are hanging in a circle for chain ringing, there's no way to tell when you look at these ropes whether the bell is what's called mouth down or mouth up. If everything was done the correct way, and when the previous ringers had left from the last practice and had lowered their bells and left them mouth down, that's like when a swing set is just stationary, right? It's not swinging at all and there's no potential energy. The rope just can be pulled and not much will happen because it's a heavy bell. And if you pull on it, it's going to take some force to start swinging it back and forth to get it to eventually raise high enough so it's in that 365 degree motion. But again, the way the rope looks when you enter that tower, if somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do and lower the bell like they were supposed to at the end of practice, it's possible that one of the bells might be precariously balanced upside down. The bell does sort of very slightly nestle resting against a piece of wood called the stay that can keep that bell upside down, but just a little tug will bring that bell crashing down and have it quickly spin. And since the bell actually weighs many times usually what you do, or at least in larger towers like the National Cathedral, you could severely injure yourself and you could lose a limb or even worse.
If you're not expecting it.
If you don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
If a rope is ever let go while it's ringing like that, they'll also go crazy wild throughout the room. And then someone super experienced has to like tame it like a bull.
It's pretty scary when a rope goes wild.
Legitimately, it is very scary.
It's also crazy when a rope breaks because the ropes do get old. They do wear out. And I've had a rope break on me, I think at least twice, where I was just holding it and suddenly I'm just holding on to this tail end. And I just felt like all the, the tension from my rope completely disappear. And I just like look up and somebody's like, quick, jump back. It's coming down on you. And I'm like, oh crap. And, and the rope is just swinging wildly. And that's actually harder because since it's like short enough, you can't just quickly, easily grab it and then control it because it's lost its bottom part. So you really don't want to have ropes break on you. You need to replace the ropes usually like every few years.
Do you just let it like swing itself out?
If you can get a hold of it, you can usually try to just resist it enough so that it stops ringing quite so high and then it'll just slowly lower itself like a swing set, right? It'll slowly just sort of come to a rest.
What's fun about that is in just a normal controlled situation, because you do have to get the bells down from mouth up to mouth down at the end of the night, which you could just do as a swing set, but that actually take a very long time and would be uncontrolled. So you want to very carefully control it back so it's mouth down and in a safe position. But if you're doing that on a really big bell, and Tom, remind me how big the biggest bell is at National Cathedral?
In terms of poundage, it's 3,588 pounds, I believe.
So 1.5 tons. The most effective way to get that thing to lower at any reasonable speed, but in control, is to just like kind of go flying with it. You'll pull on it with your weight and then you go way up into the air, maybe, I don't know, 6 feet in the air. So maybe not that high.
Yeah, you can really get yelled at if you do that like too much because they'll be like, you're putting too much stress on the wheel or something like that. But yeah, we all go for a little ride sometimes. It's fun.
It's fun. As long as it's controlled, it's fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of also, too, I was talking about how the bells can be down at the end of practice where you've sort of let them all settle and they're no longer resting up with a lot of potential energy. In order to get them up, of course, you can individually, one at a time, slowly pull on the rope and you get them going higher and higher until they're finally swinging a full 360 degrees. Or the really advanced ringers out there can do what's called raising and peel. And that's where you try to keep the bells in a sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or something, over and over and over again as they're going up. And it takes quite a bit of practice and skill to do that. I've gotten reasonably good at that, but it's still, you can really tear up your hands if you're not sure what you're doing. I've actually got a great video. This is an old video on YouTube. This is the Yardley Derrick Aubergine Society Ringing Up and Peel. Go ahead and click the link and have a listen.
Watching this video makes me realize that we didn't really narrate at all the physical act of ringing a bell, but that's another time.
That gotta be change ringing part 2.
I think you did a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, that's one of those ones where it's like, that's gonna be really hard to talk on a podcast. You have to think that one through quite carefully.
Basically, it's finesse, not strength.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be strength. We're talking about 1.5 tons of bell sometimes. That one's a little bit of strength. But for a smaller bell, it's still mostly finesse, not strength. If you try using strength, you'll just throw out your back.
It takes a lot more effort to raise the bell to get it swinging to 360 degrees, much like, kicking off on a swing set again, trying to get yourself really high. But once you're going really high, it's mostly gravity, like a pendulum that's doing it for you. You're just giving it little tugs to just nudge it a little this way or a little this way so it rings just a little faster or a little slower. And that's why you can have wonderful ringers who are octogenarians who can put me to shame.
Yep.
Of course, change ringing isn't only for tower bells. There are also...
handbell?
Yes. Handbell change ringers as well. Absolutely. There are many ringing circles, some a lot more prestigious than others and some exclusive. One of the more prestigious circles out there, arguably one of the most, is called the Ancient Society of College Youths. Some of the ringers at Washington National Cathedral are members of it. They're also called the ASCYs. They, each year, I believe, have a big fancy dinner in very formal attire, and they have lovely handbell performances where they celebrate their handbell skill. And while, of course, it's much easier from a finesse, handling side to just hold on to handbells rather than pulling on a rope to finesse a giant tower bell, the difficulty there is you are memorizing the method for 2 bells rather than 1. And so you are having to keep track of 2 bells at the same time rather than 1, with sort of a whole different way of memorizing how to do it. Click on the link for the 2021 handbell performance, please.
These guys don't look like youths.
No. No, it's just a name.
They're ancient youths.
I suppose they are younger than the society.
I mean, there are people out there that have rung literally thousands of peals. Like, there's just some people, it's a lifestyle. I mean, to them, it's like playing video games. It's like, what do I want to do today? I want to ring a peal. It's just what I do.
Chain ringing, the multiplayer video game of the 17th century.
If you're like if I'm bored and I want to play a video game like Minecraft or something like that, I can do it by myself. If I'm bored and I want to do change ringing with a big bell, that would be very difficult. How would I do it with a small bell?
You memorize patterns.
I know with handbells, it's about memorizing gaps between bells rather than lines. So when you are ringing with 2 bells, it's like, how far apart are my 2 bells in the permutation right now? And it's like, okay, they're like 2 spaces apart. And then it's like, okay, they're still 2 spaces apart, but I just have to shift down. And suddenly this one has to get closer to this one. So you're like memorizing like this sort of like, wow, this gap that's getting wider and narrower and wider and narrower. It's kind of a very different way of thinking about it.
Well, this is very pretty.
Yeah, it is actually, I do really love the sound of some of those handbell peals. They are gorgeous to listen to. And speaking of gorgeous to listen to, I think a good way to close this out today is, again, just to talk about what is change ringing often, again, used for. Of course, we ring for Sunday services. We ring for holidays and special occasions. Change ringing can be a herald of great joy. It can also be for great sadness, too. About a little over a year ago, Queen Elizabeth II died. And there was change ringing all over Great Britain and all along the Commonwealth to commemorate her life. And usually when there's a passing and change ringing bells are rung, they're rung what's called half muffled. And half muffled is when you ring the bell normally as a ringer, but in the belfry itself, there's actually a leather strap that's attached to the side of the clapper that muffles or kind of half deadens the sound every time it goes. So you hear a normal strike one time when it goes around once, but then you sort of hear this echoey sound in the other direction. And it creates a very different, more somber kind of sound. Quickly listen to the half-muffled ringing for the Diana funeral real quick. And just for a point of comparison, the half muffled ringing is usually what's rung for, most funerals and memorial services, or usually at the end of a year when you're ringing out the death of the old year. We do that at midnight at the National Cathedral, which is lots of fun. When the Queen died, when Queen Elizabeth II died, interestingly, they actually didn't do half muffled ringing. They did fully muffled ringing, where they actually put a leather strap on both sides of the bell. And the one exception was they half muffled the tenor. So you had nothing but this echoey sound the whole time, except for the tenor, which was like almost tolling every 5 or 6 seconds or so. And that sort of created both a change ringing echoey effect with just like a bell tolling for the monarch. This is the last video for you. Just quickly check on the link for Westminster Abbey fully muffled ringing solo tenor for the Queen.
We love this, I think.
Such a unique sound. I love that sound. It's a sound that I've never gotten to do. We've never done fully muffled ringing, I think. At least I haven't at the cathedral. You don't have to listen to this now, but I will put in the show notes. There is one video that's gotten a lot of views of a quarter peal that I did for a New Year's Eve, I think way back in 2013 or 2014, sometime way back there. Maybe 2013. And we did half muffled ringing at the National Cathedral. We did a quarter peal of a method called Granzer Caters on 9 bells. And it's pretty good ringing. The recording was on an iPad, so the sound isn't the best. But if you want to see what our ringing room looks like, and if you want to see what our bells sound a little bit like, you can check out the video. And I've been meaning one of these days to get better recordings of our bells and ringing in the future, and maybe even share them on our channel.
I think the reason that video has so many views is because it's usually what I use to, if anyone ever asks, what do you do for changing? I'm like, just watch this. I cannot explain this to you. Just watch this video.
Well, now you can point them to the podcast and be like, listen to this podcast and you'll know.
I'm sure all of Tom's students completely understand chain ringing now.
That would obviate a need for part 2.
We're doing a part 2. Oh boy.
That's it for now. Check out our podcast website at cathedraltalk.fm. There you will find many architectural visuals and Minecraft goodies. If you would like to support our efforts here at Cathedral Talk to aid in the restoration of Notre Dame, please use the direct link on our website to donate to friendsofnotredamedeparis.org. Friends of Notre Dame is a nonprofit organization that is leading the international fundraising efforts to rebuild and restore Notre Dame Cathedral. By donating to them through the link at cathedraltalk.fm, we'll know that our podcast is reaching new patrons. As our own Minecraft project progresses, we'll be sure to share plans, screenshots, and videos for your own visual palette. Good day and happy building.